Article 14. Masters who shall be convicted of having permitted or tolerated such gatherings as aforesaid, composed of other slaves than their own, shall be sentenced individually to indemnify their neighbors for the damages occasioned by said gatherings, and to pay for the first time a fine of 30 livres, and double that sum on the repetitions of the offense. Article 15. We forbid Negroes to sell any commodities, provisions, or produce of any kind without the written permission of their masters or without wearing their own marks or badges, and any persons purchasing anything from Negroes in violation of this article shall be sentenced to pay a fine of 1,500 livres. Articles 16, 17, 18, and 19 provide at length for the clothing of slaves and for their subsistence. Article 20, slaves who shall not be properly fed, clad, and provided for by their masters may give information thereof to the Attorney General of the Superior Council or to all the officers of an inferior jurisdiction, and may put the written exposition of their wrongs into the hands, upon which information, and even ex officio, shall the information come from another quarter, the Attorney General shall prosecute said masters without charging any cost to the complainant. It is our will that this regulation be observed in all accusations for crimes or barbarous and inhumane treatment brought by slaves against their masters. Article 21. Slaves who are disabled from working either by old age, disease, or otherwise, be the diseases incurable or nor, shall be fed and provided for by their masters, and in case they should have been abandoned by said masters, slaves shall be adjudged to the nearest hospital, to which said master shall be obliged to pay 8 cents a day for the food and maintenance of each of these slaves. And for the payment of this sum, said hospital shall have a lien on the plantation masters. So if you get sick and your master not taking care of you and you end up in the hospital, your master got to pay for your stay at the hospital. Article 22. We declare that slaves have no right to any kind of property, but that all that they acquire either by their own industry or by the ability of others or by other means of title, or it says, or by any other means or title, whatever shall be the full property of their masters. And the children of said slaves, their fathers, mothers, their kindred, or other relation, either free or slave, shall have no pretensions or claim thereto, either through testamentary, nor positions or donations inter vivace, I'm gonna have to look that word up, which dispositions and donations we declare null and void. And also whatever promise they may have entered into by persons incapable of disposing of anything or participating to any contract. 23. Masters shall be responsible for what their slaves have done by their command, and also for what transactions they have permitted their slaves to do in their shops, in the particular line of commerce with whom they were entrusted. And in case said slaves should have acted without order or authorization from their masters, said masters shall be responsible only for so much as has turned to their profit. And if said masters have not profited by the dining or transaction of their slaves, the per curiam, which the masters have permitted the slave to own, shall be subjected to all claims against said slaves, after deduction made by the masters of what may be due to them. And if said per curiam should consist in whole or in part of merchandises in which the slaves had permission to traffic, the master shall only come in for their share in common with the other creditors. 24. Slaves shall be incapable of all public functions, and of being constituted agents for any other person than their own masters, with powers to manage or conduct any kind of trade, nor can they serve as arbitrators or experts, nor shall they be called to give their testimony either in civil or in criminal cases, except when it shall be a matter of necessity and only in default of white people. But in no case shall they be permitted to serve as witness either for or against their masters. Article 25, slaves shall never be parties to civil suits, either as plaintiffs or defendants, nor shall they be allowed to appear as complainants in criminal cases, but their masters have the right to act for them in civil matters and in criminal ones, to demand punishment and reparation for such outrages and excesses as their slaves may have suffered from. Article 26. Slaves may be prosecuted criminally without their masters being made parties to the trial, except they should be indicted as accomplices, and said slaves shall be tried at first by the judges of ordinary jurisdiction, if there be any, and on appeal, by the superior council with the same rules, formalities, and proceedings observed for free persons, save the exceptions mentioned hereafter. Articles 27 to 32 were not immediately available on this file. Article 33, slaves who shall have made themselves liable to the penalty of the whip, the flour de luce brand, and ear cutting shall be tried in the last resort by the ordinary judges of the inferior court, and shall undergo the sentence passed upon them without there being an appeal to the superior council and confirmation of reversal of judgment, notwithstanding the Article 26 of the present code, which shall be applicable only to those judgments in which the slave is sentenced to be hamstrung or suffer death. Article 34, freed or born free Negroes who have afforded refuge in their houses to fugitive slaves shall be sentenced to pay to the masters of said slaves the sum of 30 livres a day for every day during which they have concealed said fugitives. And all other free persons guilty of the same offense shall pay a fine of 10 livres a day as aforesaid, and should be freed. And should the freed or freed-born Negroes not be able to pay the fines herein specified, they shall be reduced to the condition of slaves and be sold as such. So if you can't pay for your offense of smuggling some slaves, you're just going to be a slave yourself. Should the price of the sale exceed the sum mentioned in the judgment, the surplus shall be delivered to the hospital. 35. We permit our subjects in this colony who may have slaves concealed in any place whatever to have them sought after by such persons and in such way they deem proper, so to proceed themselves to such researches as they may think best. Article 36, the slave who is sentenced to suffer death on the denunciation of his master shall, when that master is not an accomplice to the crime, be appraised before his execution by 2 of the principal inhabitants of the locality, who shall be especially appointed by the judge, and the amount of said appraisement shall be paid to the master, to raise this sum, and shall be collected by the persons invested with that authority. 37. We forbid all the officers of the Superior Council and all our other officers of the justice in the colony to take any fees or receive any prerequisites in criminal suits against slaves under the penalty in so doing of being dealt with as guilty of extortion. 38. We also forbid all of our subjects in this colony, whatever their condition or rank may be, to apply on their own private authority the rack to their slaves under any pretenses whatever, and to mutilate said slaves in any one of their limbs or in any part of their bodies under the penalty of confiscation of said slave and master so offending shall be liable to a criminal put their slaves in irons and to have them whipped with rods or ropes. So you can't cut their shit off. You can't cut their limbs off, but you can hang them. You can whip them. You can burn them. You can only dismember ears based off of the system that they think is perfect or thought was good. We command our officers of justices in this colony to institute criminal process against masters and overseers who shall kill or mutilate their slaves when in their power and under their supervision, and to punish said murder according to the atrocity of the circumstances, and in case of the offenses shall be pardonable when we permit them to pardon said master and overseer without being necessary to obtain from us letters patent of pardon. Article 40, slaves shall be held in law as movables, and as such they shall be part of the community of acquest between husband and wife. They shall be seized under mortgage whatever, and they shall be equally divided amongst the co-heirs without admitting from any one of said heirs any claim founded on preciput or right of primogeniture or dowry. A lot of key words in there. Articles 41 and 42 are entirely relative to judicial forms and proceedings. Article 43, husbands and wives shall not be seized and sold separately when belonging to the same master, and their children, whom under 14 years of age, shall not be separated from their parents, and such seizures and sales shall be null and void. The present article shall apply to voluntary sales, and in such case sales should take place in violation of the law. The seller shall be deprived of the slave he has illegally retained, and said slave shall be adjudged to the purchased without any additional. Article 14, slaves 14 years old and from this age up to 60 who are settled on lands and plantations and are present working on them shall not be liable to seizure for debt except for what may be due out of the purchase money agreed to be paid for them, unless said grounds or plantations should be distressed and seized in judicial sale of a real estate, without including the slaves of the aforesaid age who are part of the said estate, shall be deemed null and void. 45, 46, 47, 48, and 49, all relative to certain formalities to be observed in judicial proceedings. Article 50, masters when 25 years old shall have the power to manumit their slaves, either by testamentary dispositions or by acts inter vivace, but as there may be mercenary masters disposed to set a price on the liberation of their slaves, and thereas slaves with a view to acquire the necessary means to purchase their freedom may be tempted to commit theft or deeds of plunder, no matter to set free his slaves without the obtaining from the superior council a decree of permission to that effect, which permission shall be granted without cost when the motive for the setting free of said slaves as specified in the petition of the master shall appear legitimate to the tribunal. All future acts for the emancipation of slaves freed shall not be entitled to their freedom. They shall be taken away from their former masters and confiscated for the benefit of the India Company. However, should slaves be appointed by their masters tutors to their children, said slaves shall be held and regarded as being set free to all intent and purposes. We declare that the acts for the enfranchisement of slaves passed according to the forms above described shall be equivalent to an act of naturalization. So they naturalize you to put you under their jurisdiction. When said slaves are not born in our colony of Louisiana, they shall enjoy all the rights and privileges inherent to our subjects born in our kingdoms or any land or colony under our dominion. We declare, however, that all manumitted slaves and all freeborn Negroes are incapable of receiving donations, either by testamentary dispositions or by acts inter vivos from the whites. Said donation shall be null and void, and the objects of said donation shall be applied to the benefits of the nearest hospital. You cannot receive anything. 53, we commend all manumitted slaves to show the profoundest respect to their former masters, to their widows and children, and any injury of insult or insult offered by said manumitted slave to their former masters, their widows or children shall be punished with more severity than if it had been offered to any other person. We, however, declared them exempt from the discharge of all duties or services and from payment of all taxes or fees and for or anything else in relation to their persons or to their personal or real estate, either during the life or after the death of the said slave. We grant manumitted slaves the same rights, privileges, and immunities which are enjoyed by free-born persons. It is our pleasure that their merit in having acquired their freedom shall produce in their favor not only with regards to their persons, but also their property, the same effects which our other subjects derive from the happy circumstances of their having been born free. So this is what they set up. This is just the Christian black codes. We're going to get into the Virginia slave codes next, how Virginia set up their colony and set up this whole scam on us. But I'm glad to share this information with you. Barkley Bay University. We're going to get back with you guys later on with another video following up the Virginia slave codes, and we'll go from there. Islam, thank you.